go. Starting off, 30 companies, 46 of you guys here. Really excited to share with you what it is that we know about Vulkaponic. You've seen in some of the marketing materials, we feel like it truly is the future of the interior landscape industry. Certainly, it's not too often that you see something super innovative, right? I mean, plants have been around since the beginning of time. We've really spent a lot of time and energy figuring out how best to take care of them. Obviously, we've brought them indoors, and all of us are very good at what we do. But we're just really excited to share with you Vulkaponic, which is not anything new. In fact, been used in Europe for over 2 decades, but really new to the U.S. market. So excited to walk through this. Many people on the call have received samples. In fact, we've shipped out over 250 samples of Vulkaponic across the U.S. And I think we can navigate to that slide there. 77 companies have either received samples or are already in the process of doing installations in Vulkaponic with some great success. It is out and about. Really, when we looked at this, we said, hey, we want to roll this out Jan 1 or in January at TPIE. We couldn't keep it contained. And so there's a lot of samples going out. A lot of people are in some state of trialing it or, in fact, going through and doing their installations with it. So excited to get started. Next slide, please. We're going to go through our agenda, what it is that we're going to cover. So who is Vulkaponic USA? I may be a familiar face. Mike may be. We've been in the industry for, I guess, going on 42 years. 42 years. Now I'm 42 years old, so I haven't been a part of it that long. But we have some extensive experience and time within the industry. So we'll talk about why Vulkaponic USA, how it is that we got here, and then what is Vulkaponic. So we want to go through the benefits, installation, maintenance. We're going to talk through an ROI calculator. Obviously, things like this have to have a return on investment. So we'll walk through that. It really is for some of those more number crunching type of people, but we have that out there. And then we'll walk through distribution of the product and then open up any Q&A. I know there are a handful of you guys out there outside of folks who have samples, but are familiar with Vulkaponic, whether you've taken trips over to Europe and seen what it is that they're doing there or talked with colleagues that we all know very well. This may not be new to you, but there might be some great information that you're covering. And at a minimum, we're going to share our experience and what it is that we've done on our side of the microphones here. So with that being said, we'll click over to the next slide and kick it over to you, Mike.
All right. Well, hey, great to be here with everybody and just share our experience with Vulkaponic and kind of really why, what is Vulkaponic USA and how we got here. So Vulkaponic USA is a company formed this year in 2024, and the whole purpose is to efficiently distribute Vulkaponic through the United States. We have been bringing Vulkaponic in for, since 2022, I believe it has been, some sample bags from Europe, eventually some pallets, and it is very difficult to get the product here. So we have started to bring in ocean containers of it ourselves for internal usage at our business, but realize that this is something very beneficial to the entire industry. So last year, 2023, we arranged a trip to the source to meet up with manufacturers of Vulkaponic, which is Klans Systems out of Krefft, Germany, and formed a really nice and deep relationship and friendship with the manufacturers of the product. So we formed a manufacturer's distributor agreement for the United States with Klans through Vulkaponic USA. So we're a distributor for them for this region of the world. And Klans' history of Vulkaponic goes back over 20 years in developing the product. Same company that developed the Lechuzapon product that you may be familiar with. So, and also all other types of usage of Vulkaponic materials for greening, like golf greens and rooftop gardens and lightweight soil mixes and that type of thing. So, however, our true background is with our interior landscape company. So we do approach this from the interior landscaping side of the business. And as Josh indicated, we've been doing this since 1983 through Natura. So we have been bringing product in initially for Natura's use, but also wanted to make it available to the American market. So our experience in sub-irrigation really goes back to about 1998, 99, as the whole industry was transitioning to sub-irrigation. And that's really what Vulkaponic is. It's a sub-irrigation substrate. We started out with wick and riser. We were on a 7-day service cycle. We immediately went to a 14-day service cycle. We did add more minutes per visit. And as Josh has said, we are a very much a number crunching business. We know how many minutes on average it takes to service a 10-inch plant, a 14-inch plant, 6, 8-inch plants, all that. We know by minute. So when we went to sub-irrigation, and we're not going to be there as frequently, we added 10% more time for every visit, since we don't be there really every 2 weeks. Then from wick and riser usage for 10 to 15 years, going through 2000, maybe 12, 15, ASI, Architectural Supplements, came up with their sub-irrigation device through Dr. Joe Shaloni. Really nice system. We liked it. We're using that extensively until we came into our experience with Vulkaponic, and we feel this has got tremendous benefits even beyond that ASI bucket, which is was still very good. But yeah, we've always been kind of on the leading edge of technology organizationally. One reason is we're a branch-based business, and we just really had to implement technology. And we've been doing that in our horticultural side of the business as much as we can. So with that, I'm going to pass back to Josh for the source of Vulkaponic.
Yeah, so how is it that we got here? Well, as Mike alluded, we went over to Germany once we heard about it, right? So there's some colleagues in the UK who, as we're, I don't know, licking wounds from COVID, saying, hey, how is it that you guys survived this? And they said, well, you know, I mean, it's tough, just like, you know, everybody experienced. But one thing that was our saving grace was our ability to not go and water these plants as frequently as most of us would need to do so. And it was because of their use of Vulkaponic. And so we went over there and said, we need to check this stuff out. And we brought over 25-liter bags. So for those of you who've had the samples, you see the 25-liter bags. I brought a pallet of that in and really just wanted to trial it. And we were blown away. Mm-hmm. Just in terms of how those plants looked. Extending the service cycles was like super cool, you know, but just how they looked was really amazing to us. And so we said, you know what, we need to trial this on a larger scale. And so brought in pallets of it and realized that went pretty quickly once we started putting new installations in it. And again, this was about 2 years ago. And then said, you know what, we need to bring in full containers of this product. And so started bringing in full containers in the spring of 23. And as of today, we've got 18 that have come in, or 2 of them are actually on the water right now, but bringing quite a bit of product in. What it is that we've done with that on the Natura side is we have 400 plus accounts that have been either installed with new installations or accounts that we've gone and done retrofits in. So we've actually gone in and pulled out what we were using was the ASI sub-irrigation bucket, again, known as like the gold standard in sub-irrigation, and retrofitted those jobs with the Vulkaponic product. And so seeing, you know, just huge savings. And here's the thing for me. In our business, really any service business, but with what we do, there's always this tension that we are trying to manage between efficiency and quality, right? You know, we're looking at how much time we can allot on an account and how quickly our team's moving through that, but always at the expense of, okay, well, what is going to happen, you know, with quality? Very rarely is there something that you can implement where you're saying, okay, well, not only are we able to be more efficient with how we go about doing what we do, but we're also seeing an increase in quality. And that's just directly due to the environment that Vulkaponic is able to create for the plants. So we again, you know, we're just really blown away, and so decided to go, you know, all in on that. And again, felt like it was too good to keep to ourselves. You know, we feel like this is something that all of you guys need to know about if you don't already, and certainly have access to. So as we said, it's in 77 cities across the US right now, and really excited to share with you everything that we know about Vulkaponic. So next slide here. So that's us actually standing in the mine. There it is. That's in Kruf, Germany. This is what a pumice mine looks like. So for those of you who are not up on your study of rocks, as we all probably did at some point in time, this is a volcanic material. And what pumice is it's that plume of smoke that goes up when the volcano explodes, and you get different hardnesses of that product. So closer to the center of the volcano, you're going to have a harder type of pumice. They're using that for construction materials, making cinder blocks that are really good at absorbing sound, and moving all the way out to medium and light pumices. Light pumices, you'll see that in face scrubs and toothpastes and things like that. Vulkaponic actually uses a medium grade pumice, and so that's what we are looking at here. You see some of those striations right there. That is the pumice that we are actually mining.
Well, I think one thing to point out is you see all those layers of the sedimentary, that's not sedimentary rock, but the sediment layers to the left of the screen represent individual volcanic explosions, maybe a few inches deep with each one of them. So you can see over tens of thousands of years how old this product is.
Advancing. Oh, it's a little slow.
It's a delay.
Okay, so once that gets mined, here it is at Klons in Germany. So that is the pumice substrate. It's right there. You see 2 to 5 millimeters in size right there. We end up with a mix of 3 to 8 millimeters. The other component is the zeolite. And so there is a picture of the zeolite. This comes from Slovakia. Important to note that the quality of pumice and the quality of zeolite that goes into this mixture is very important, right? When you're looking at, salinities of these products and pHs of these products, it's very important that the quality of this is taken into consideration, which is why this zeolite comes all the way from Slovakia, gets mixed with pumice in Germany, and then over here into the United States.
Well, good point, because there is zeolite availability in Germany. They choose not to use it because the quality isn't consistent, and
That's right.
The salinity levels are high.
That's right. So all that combines, and here you can see Mike mentioned Lechuza Pond. A lot of you are probably pretty familiar with that. This is where that gets mixed here at Klons. But the pumice and zeolite get mixed at a 75% pumice, 25% zeolite mixture. And what that then equates to is a product that can hold 30% of its weight in volume with water. So lots of pore space. The pumice is really holding a lot of water, and then you have those zeolites that have a very high cation exchange. And so they're able to receive those nutrients and then release those nutrients back to the plants when they need it. So what is Vulkaponic? You are looking at a, I hope, high-res image of that. So that gray or that tan material is going to be the pumice. And this right here is moist, because then you see the zeolites in there. And that's more of that green looking rock. When it is moist, it does have that little green hue to it. So there it is at that 75-25% mixture, and that's a 3 to 8 millimeter screened product, which we found to be ideal for interior landscaping. So a high quality mineral substrate trusted across Europe for decades. Again, this is not new. It's new to us, but not new in the horticultural industry. Mined near eruptions, we talked about that it is a volcanic product. I'll take a moment to talk about LECA here, lightweight expanded clay aggregate. In fact, if you've used the ASI segregation pot, you use LECA in that. You may have also experimented with that. The difference is that's clay that they then have to heat up to extreme temperatures. So it takes a lot of fossil fuels to be able to expand that clay to create those pore spaces. Whereas this too has been expanded. It was just done by a volcano many, many, many years ago. The other thing that I'll talk about here, and you might also cover that when we go through watering, is the Vulkaponic is actually absorbing like a sponge all the water that you will then put in it, whereas Leca or Haydite actually has to sit into a reservoir because that water is then translocated up through the Haydite or the Leca, whereas it's actually inside the Vulkaponic. Again, we talked about it holding 30% of its weight in water. 35% is in just air pore space. We know our roots need a lot of air, and there is a lot of air available to the plants when they're planted up in Vulkaponic. And we talked about the ratio, 75% pumice, 25% zeolites.
And I think that's really a key to drill in on. Why do plants look better in Vulkaponic? You know, the quality is better. The reason is you look at how granular and rather chunky that is. So when that's in a container, you have all that aeration down the sides and underneath the root system, providing gas exchange for the root. So that's really a huge benefit.
So we'll then talk about the benefits of Vulkaponic, and there really are many. You kind of get to a point where you got to settle in on a few of them. But first and foremost, enhanced plant growth. End of the day, the plants just look better, as Mike was just mentioning right there. Multiple reasons why. As much water as it wants and needs when it wants and needs it. Certainly as much air as it needs as well. It provides a superior growing condition for the plant. Consistent quality, unlike traditional soil mixes, where we're getting from multiple growers, coming from multiple regions within the country. There's a very consistent quality of this product. We talked about moisture retention. It holds a lot of water. We'll get into the extended service cycles, but because it holds so much water, we're able to push watering cycles 4 to 6 weeks. Well, here we go, 4 to 6 weeks on the watering cycles, and we're going to break this down when we get into the ROI calculator, but that really equates to a 25 to 37.5% labor savings when we look at how we're able to extend those watering cycles. And hear me when I say that, I'm not saying service cycles, we can talk about that again, but really the plants do not need water every week or every other week. We're able to extend the watering cycles 4 to 6 weeks. And reduced risk of root rot, right? When you have more air moving through that root ball, you're going to reduce your risk of that. And then pest reduction. And this is funny, on the customer side of things, again, Natura has 400 plus accounts installed. When we go and talk to them, their number one thing, and it's not like we're airing out our laundry, we got gnats everywhere, but we all experience issues with gnats from time to time. We live in a very humid environment, and that is the customer's number one thing that are happy about. They're like, no more gnats. Well, why is that? There's no organic material that the gnats have access to. Now, if there's a way for the gnat to get in, I'm not saying you will have zero gnats in Vulkaponic. You just need to make sure that it's covered up and the gnats are not able to get down into the soil root ball where they do their nasty things. I think I'm going to pass it over to you on the planting of Vulkaponic.
Okay, awesome. We're going to talk about planting. We're going to talk about watering and so forth. So I have a few slides here for you. Essentially, if you look at this graphic, you'll see how the Vulkaponic does go down the sides and underneath the root ball. That's where we talked about the opportunity for aeration with that gas exchange of the root system and why we don't have waterlogged soil. The beauty of using Vulkaponic is you can buy plants from any grower, whether it's Florida grown, Hawaiian grown, California, using the original soil that grower's growing their product in. So essentially, you're adding Vulkaponic up to 12 inches at the bottom of the container. 12 inches is about the max. You can go a little bit more, but 12 inches is a good rule of thumb on capillary action on being able to pull water up to the root system. If you're going one of our tall, say, European containers, if the bottom of the container is greater than 12 inches, you'll need to put a flexible liner or some other intermediate staging in order to create a platform for your buildup there. So you're adding 12 inches to the bottom, ensuring that the root ball's 2 inches from the top of the container. That allows you to add 1 inch of Vulkaponic on the top surface of that root ball. And as Josh was saying, that's what keeps the gnats from being able to get into that soil and do their breeding and laying eggs and going through that whole life cycle. We don't water plants when we plant them up in the warehouse initially. It's at the job site. We'll water plants. We'll cover watering in just a little bit. So if all goes well, I can play a video for you and you can hear it. So let me, this is only about 30 seconds. Here we go.
The planting process involves the following steps. Waterproof the planter and fill with substrate. Remove the plant from the pot. Remove excess and loose soil from the root ball. Place plant into the planter. Fill the planter with Vulkaponic. Water. Done.
So these are some clips. This is a PDF which is available at the website resource section, just some lifts off of that. So if you wanted to have a document to bring out to your warehouse to give to your team, you can show them the video in your offices. Of course, you'll have audio there, I'm sure. But this is just a follow-up doc to show them the different stages. One thing that's important, and that's going to be on the lower left slide, initially watering the top of the root ball to establish that capillary action. So you have a moist root ball up against moist Vulkaponic. Watering guide. So the one thing to keep in mind is, this 4-week cycle, it's really, the opportunity is there because the product absorbs so much water. And it's not like magically the plants don't need as much water planted in Vulkaponic. They need the exact same amount of water to be in an optimal condition given the light level and heat and those type of things. But the beauty is because the substrate absorbs 30% of its water by volume, it just holds so much water at that watering interval. So with each watering, obviously you're providing enough within the Vulkaponic to go for 4 weeks. And you can see that here's a watering guide. We found this to be very accurate in terms of how much water plants will need in low light or high light conditions. Some of you may use the Primescape watering bucket as we do, but that is 2.5 gallons. So one of the things our team will do is they'll pour off water for smaller plants into a smaller metered cup, a 16-ounce cup or measuring cup to take with them to the job site. So obviously watering amounts vary by the variety, pot size, heat, and everything that we're typically accustomed to. And you still would use a soil probe. You only have 1 inch of Vulkaponic to get through to get to that root ball. So just like any other traditional monitoring of moisture, you're using a soil probe to determine how much moisture is in that container. And then top watering initially, and then afterwards, you can see the watering zone. The idea there is you're providing water into the Vulkaponic. You're not watering the root ball per se. You're just filling the bottom of your reservoir so that the Vulkaponic can then absorb that water. So your technicians still need to be horticulturists. They still need to be looking at that plant, assessing what does the foliage look like? Is it wilted? Is it not wilted? Is the root ball, if the root ball is saturated, you're going to move on and not apply water within that water cycle. So definitely want to not just dump water and go, but check that root system.
Vulkaponic watering cycles are usually on a 4-week interval. Plants in Vulkaponic don't use less water. A larger volume of water is applied with each watering for the plant's requirements over several weeks, which is completely absorbed within 24 to 48 hours. As with all interior plantings, the plant's water needs depend on the variety, pot size, heat, and light levels at the specific location. Assess plant for turgidity or signs of wilt. Brush away the top layer of Vulkaponic from root ball, assess upper root ball, for moisture. Using a soil probe, assess deeper into the root ball for moisture. Release the soil samples into your hand. Squeeze samples between your fingers to determine moisture content. Brush Vulkaponic back into place. For the initial watering, water the root ball when filling the reservoir to establish capillary action. During subsequent watering, evenly water between the root ball and decorative planter. Use this guide for a 4-week watering cycle. Fertilize in Vulkaponic with liquid fertilizer in the same way as a plant in soil at half or a quarter of the recommended label rate. Generally, plants in Vulkaponic don't need to be fertilized for 4 to 6 months after planting.
Okay, so let's advance this. Just with the planting guide, we also have a download at the resources page of vulkaponicusa.com on this clips from this video, everything that we had covered right there. So fertilizer, you're fertilizing in Vulkaponic just as you would with a regular plant in sub-irrigation or any type of interior planting. Liquid fertilizer is best. We found that we don't need to fertilize for 4 to 6 months once plants come from the nursery or just being planted, just because the amount of fertilizer that's already in the soil. So like we do in our industry, look at the label rate, cut it in half, cut it in a quarter. You don't need that much. You don't want your plants to outgrow the intended design. So when in doubt, you want to fertilize just a bit less. Now, with that, I'm going to get into this profit calculator and talk about the profitability of Vulkaponic. This is a little bit larger. This is at our website as well. This is a little bit larger image than I was hoping to have on the screen. But basically, this will help you calculate how much product you do need to use with Vulkaponic. The way it works is you create your current service assumptions, okay? To start out with your burdened labor cost per hour. If you hover over here, it's like insert your hourly rate, including taxes, benefits, PTO, and all those related expenses. If you want to adjust it, you certainly can. We go with $30 with our organization. What is your current service frequency? How many days are you on a service frequency? You'll find you'll have a huge ROI if you drop this down to 7. You went from a 7 to perhaps a 28-day frequency, but we're going to use this 14-day current, and annual replacements at 30%. Industry standards, I think we'd agree, 30 to 35% annual plant replacements. So we'll go with 30 under the current assumptions. And then how long are you going to keep a customer? Honestly, we have some that you could put 40 in here, but also we have some that just might go 3 years in a contract and be done. But I would say on average, pick what you think is appropriate for your organization. You can slide up and down and pick how many years you expect to keep that customer. I'll go with 5 in this example. And then some installation assumptions. What this is looking at is include your current costs of sub-irrigation, drip saucers, foam collars, filler, that type of thing. What are you paying right now? In this example, it's $6.50 for a 6.5-inch pot for sub-irrigation. Bring it up, bring it down. Again, make this work for what is appropriate for your company, and then the quantity of plants you might go with. So I'm going to go with, you can see we have this for 8-inch. I'm going to go ahead and select, let's say we're going to do 5 6-inch plants in this type of example, and we'll go with 5 8-inch plants. Let's come back to our larger 10 and 14-inch plants, which we want to sell more of. So we're going to do, say, 10 10s. Yeah, we don't use as many 12s.
It's a big job.
Yeah. Let's say we did 10 14s. So I think that's going to be about 30 plants or so. Let's say we didn't do any 17s, although you could if you wanted to. But what this is starting to show you is every time, as you saw, you make an entry, it starts to do a live calc on the profitability of Vulkaponic. But we're not done yet. We're going to make some other Vulkaponic assumptions. and that is, what is your service frequency going to be? If you hover here, you'll see that well, you can choose right here to change it however you'd want to. But if I go with 28, which I like, because that's what we're doing. But just as when we went to sub-irrigation back 25 years ago, we added 10% more service time. What this calculator is doing is adding 25% more service time than where our plant company had been prior to using Vulkaponic. Why a 25% increase in on-account time? To allow for additional water being applied. Mm-hmm. We know that if you're not going to be applying water every 2 weeks, but every 4 weeks, it's going to take more time. So there's more time allocated here with this. Now, there is another item to consider, and that is this intermittent wellness check. If you want to provide a check, you're not comfortable with going every 28 days, and we weren't as well, and many of our accounts are still on a 14-day cycle, but it's not a 14-day service cycle, 28-day service cycle with an intermediate 14-day wellness check. This is with the information icon saying that we are going to provide 25% of that original service time with a wellness check. So those of you that are thinking the numbers, well, hey, you added 25% more time for the servicing cycle, then another 25% time here. But over a 4-week basis, we have cut 25% of the time, or as you can see, 24.7% of the time out of servicing that account over that 4-week cycle. So that's an important consideration there. The plant improvement percentage here, we know plants are healthier in Vulkaponic because of the aeration to the root system. Historically, at our business, we were putting in really 33% of our plant value is being replaced or being charged to the customer for annual replacements. 30% is what we went with this calculator on the service assumptions, but we know plants are healthier. We spoke to our British colleagues. They replace 10% of their inventory annually because of Vulkaponic. So if you look at what the difference is between historically a 30% to a 10%, that is a 67% improvement in replacements planting in Vulkaponic.
Yeah, they just replace less plants. I mean, at first when we asked, they're like, what do you mean replacements?
Exactly. So we know there's a benefit here, but I'm going to take about half of what their benefit was and say, we'll probably have a 30% improvement in plant replacements. So maybe what we'll do, rather than 30% annually, they'll drop it to 20%, about a 30% improvement. So those of you who may have noticed this return on investment all of a sudden jumped from 7 times to and change to that 21.7 time. And then what is the cost of Vulkaponic? It's about $1 a liter for 1 to 3 bags. So here's pricing. You'll see right here. I'm going to go with the $14.95 for a 1,500 liter super sack of it. But then once you see this, you'll see at the bottom as you keep scrolling through the Vulkaponic profitability right here and the estimated usage. So for our example, with this number of containers of different pot sizes, and we're looking at 615 liters of Vulkaponic needed for this job site. The installation cost difference from the assumptions we made was $142 more than before, but the increased profit because of the lower labor and lower replacements is $3,096. We did lower labor by 24.7%, and the overall return on investment, the investment of $142 in additional cost for a $3,000+ improvement is a 21.7% return on that investment of $142. If you scroll down through this a little bit further, you'll just see those numbers that are already summarized at the bottom of the list here. So one thing to keep in mind, in any of us, I'm sure we all have them that have those outline accounts, and it's like, an intermittent wellness check, I'm just not going to do it. I trust the product. I'm going to go every 28 days. I've proven it to myself. Say, no, we're not going to do the 14-day. That's where you see that you've reduced your labor hours by 37%. Same costs for install different, same increased profit, but now your return on that $142 increased cost is over 25 times. So there's that 37% decreased labor hours. Again, if you wanted to go up to that intermittent wellness check every 2 weeks, you have that 25% savings in labor. So that is the usage and profit calculator. Again, it's at the website under the resources section. Just go ahead and navigate there and pick it up and put in your own assumptions for your organization.
You know, one thing I think I'll add on to this is that, and I don't know about you guys, but for us, we found it just more difficult lately to find people to do what we do, you know, and obviously we know that there is a ton of training that goes into, you know, getting that green thumb and training them up on how to be a horticulturalist. What we know is that you kind of got to kill a lot of plants.
Mhm.
We also know we need to take a senior horticulturalist to be with you that can be, you know, very inefficient, but obviously, you know, really important. What we've seen here is that Vulkaponic is just a very forgiving substrate, a very forgiving media. And what I mean is, you know, from an underwatering standpoint to an overwatering standpoint, yes, you can still underwater. Yes, you absolutely can float a plant in Vulkaponic, but it is very forgiving for those new horticulturalists coming on that we're training. There's just more leniency in how you're taking care of those plants, and
Absolutely.
and you're trying to find, you know, good help to do what we do. All that matters. All right, so here we have a distribution map. ASI, our great friends at ASI, I'm sure there's nobody on the call who doesn't know who ASI is. They are distributing this product as well. And so I did my best to copy the colors for ASI and Vulkaponic USA, and that is the distribution map. So if you're sitting here looking and saying, all right, I am in Georgia, so Vulkaponic USA is going to be where I get my product. We have 2 distribution centers, one in San Antonio and one in Tampa, Florida. And then Architectural Supplements, which we've really enjoyed working with them and walking through this product, much like when we were looking at the ASI sub-irrigation bucket, talking to them about, you know, Vulkaponic. And when we look at this, like, we can get this to the US, but then trying to determine how we get it to all of you interior landscapers, if it's all just based in Texas, it can become pretty expensive to ship via freight. And so ASI believes in this. They've been doing their own trials, and they said, yes, we too believe that this is the future of interior landscaping. And so they're going to be distributing the product out of their Bakersfield locations and their Waterbury locations.
And let me just add, whoever on the call is wanting to order product, it doesn't matter if you call ASI first or Vulkaponic USA first. Internally, each of our organizations will shuttle the distribution of the product to you from the closest vicinity there. So pricing is consistent between all of us, ASI and Vulkaponic. So it doesn't really matter. You'll tend to go with who you know is going to ultimately be fulfilling. But if you are accustomed to placing orders with ASI, you're in Chicago, go ahead and do it. We'll send it down to us to actually fulfill that order. And likewise, if you're in Arizona and you called ASI in California, they would send that order to us to fulfill out of Texas.
Jean-Pierre, I see you on the call there.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
You know, I mean, ASI is just really excited to work with you guys on this. Having, you know, worked in Europe myself, I've really have firsthand experience of seeing how much lower the replacement rates are. And additionally, you know, the extended, you know, watering cycles are really a game changer. So we're really excited to really push the industry as a whole forward with this product. I think it's super exciting, and here at ASI we're really you know, really happy to be part of it. So
Nice.
yeah,
Likewise, Jean-Pierre. And for those of you going to TPIE, Vulkaponic USA will have a booth where you can touch and feel it. Next slide, please. ASI will also have it in their booth, but if you can't wait till then, and I would suggest that you don't, many of you already have samples, but you can email hello@vulkaponicusa.com or just go to our website. There is buttons all over it for you to be able to click to get your free sample. We want you to try this. We want you to experience what it is that we've experienced with it. I will say we do ask you to pay the freight, but we're not charging for any of the product samples. And it's about $100 for 100 liters of product when we ship that via ground to you. So again, if you haven't got your samples, you can click over there. Some of you are like, 100 liters sounds like a lot. I'd like half of that. It is a lot. In fact, you can trial, 6 or so 10-inch plants with the samples that we're sending. But we want you to try different varieties and different environments. And so if you feel like it's too much, we can send half that. But that is available on the website right now. And again, 250 of your closest friends have already been trying that out. So I hope to do this in somewhat of an orderly fashion. I think you all have the ability to raise your hand. And so we'll do a Q&A session. Looks like Mark is the first one to get his hand up there. So go ahead and unmute yourself, Mark, and fire away.
All right. Do you distribute right now in Canada?
We have sent samples to Canada, and absolutely, there is some, customs and things like that we have to work through. But yes,
We'll make it work.
We'll make it work for you.
All right.
Yes.
Because I've heard that yes, you guys ship some samples through ASI, I believe. And I've seen also that, am I wrong? But I've seen a distribution map with some distributors like in Winnipeg, or not sure.
We did send some up there. You're right. There was a pin up in Canada, and that went to Elliot Bennett for him to trial some in his business.
All right.
But yeah, there's 4 distribution centers: Texas, Florida, Connecticut, and California.
We have a account open with ASI, so I'm going to reach out for some
Excellent.
samples. All right. Thanks.
Very good.
Great.
All samples are shipping out of Texas. So if you do want samples, ASI can direct you to us, but I would suggest you go to the Vulkaponic USA website and just click on the free sample button.
Perfect. Thanks.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see, Matt. Let's go with you first.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Quick question about the wellness checks and probing. So are you guys on the wellness checks actually probing for soil moisture on the wellness checks?
That's a great question. The answer is no, unless we would see any signs of stress. That's the whole wellness check is just to do a quick walkthrough. If you see any yellow, pull it, talk to your customer, continue the relationship. But unless you see any signs of stress, and that's where, you're really getting to know your plants by looking at them. Do you see any curled leaves under Cenas? Do you see any drooping leaves? But no, it's just a walkthrough to assure that nothing was missed and went too dry.
Matt, what we've heard from others who do what we do, and we certainly experience that ourselves, which is why we have the wellness visit, is customers are not going to like that we're only here, once a month. And so for a large degree, it's more to, show face and shake their hand and monitor as we're getting these plants adjusted to Vulkaponic, which happens extremely quickly. But yeah, more often than not, you're not going to have to intervene in any way with the plant.
And keeping in mind that wellness check is really 25% of that original service time prior to installing Vulkaponic. So you really wouldn't have time to be probing every plant. And you'll find that the plants themselves, once you've experimented with samples, they don't need to be watered, other than every 4 weeks.
Okay, so you're able to get all of them pretty much on a 4-week cycle.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Derek.
Yep.
Hey, yeah, I got a quick question. I have
I've experimented with the samples that I ordered from you guys, and everything's been great. But I haven't tried it on. I have a ficus tree and well, a bunch of plants that are in these real bright, sunny locations. They're in 14-inch grow pots in a ASI Phoenix 18 cylinder. So there's not. I mean, there's some room around the root ball, but there's not a whole lot underneath. And those plants use about, I would say, 3 gallons every 4 weeks total. So I'll get them on a 14-day schedule, about 1.5 gallons each, and then the next time 1.5 gallons. Well, I need to, if I was to put Vulkaponic in that planter, would I have to water that plant 3 gallons? Because it's not going to change the water usage. And then, so like the amount of Vulkaponic we have surrounding it is going to change how long the interval is going to be, right? Between waterings?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have that watering card. Let me see if I can pull up to see on a 17-inch what it was. It was probably,
You said 14-inch.
oh, it's 14. You know, one, you're going to be, I would say that might be an interesting one to see how much space you have underneath that decorative, from the decorative pot to the root bottom of the root ball, that Phoenix. I would be giving it the amount of water that it needs, because if it's going to be, in other words, your full 3 gallons, because you're still going to be pulling that material up the sides of that ASI container, and you will be saturating the bottom initially. But I would suspect that after the first week of 4 weeks, that water's gone off the bottom, but there's so much saturation there that it's going to be not sitting in water. So, the whole idea, you are creating a reservoir. You want really certainly a small plant, 2 to 4 inches of Vulkaponic, and this is all covered on our website in the planting guide in more detail. 6 to 8 inches, on larger plants, you may not have 6 inches. So I would still be putting the amount of water in there and knowing that the Vulkaponics, it may be saturated initially, but within a few days, that water should be pulled up into the product.
And that's kind of what I noticed on some 6-inch plants. I put them in some glass cylinders, and to get them to last 4 weeks, I had to fill it up a little bit so it would maybe come up an inch or so on the root ball and soak up that water, and then the Vulkaponic would soak up the rest, and then I could get it to last 4 weeks. So that's kind of what I figured, even if it, because the plant's going to be dry after 4 weeks, that it's okay for it to sit in a little for the root ball to soak up directly. You think that's all right?
Yeah.
I do think it's all right. Yeah. And the 6-inch plant, we didn't have it on the card, but it should be about a quarter gallon of so what is that? A quart, about a quart for that 6-inch plant should be what it should take to bring it over 4 weeks.
That's what I noticed. So yeah, I guess that was the only question I have.
Great question.
Thanks, Derek.
Thanks.
Mark.
Yeah, another question. Large trees and large installation. Let's say you have a 21 inches of ficus. Have you seen challenges for soil density? I mean, do you need to tie the tree, or it doesn't make any difference?
No, we haven't seen that. Obviously, you'd need to take that into consideration if you're doing something from an exterior standpoint, but you'd have to do that with soil anyway. It is a rigid rock. It's a locking type of rock, if you will, versus pea gravel, which would not be considered a locking rock. And so it does get pretty rigid, at least rigid enough that you don't need to do any type of staking or anything like that.
All right, thanks.
Great
now
question.
I've seen that a lot of people doing semi irrigation, they sometimes use like osmocat, like slow release fertilizer.
Yes.
Did you consider that, or it was only liquid fertilizer?
You can absolutely use it. In fact, in Europe, it's available pre-mixed into the Vulkaponic. They do use, in fact, Osmocote is what they use. Now, shipping fertilizer in a sea container is a little more difficult than doing so without. What you will see though is those little pellets have nowhere to really go, right? So they'll release their fertilizer into the Vulkaponic, and if you recall, it's the zeolite that's absorbing that and then releasing it back to the plant. But we haven't seen for ourselves, but this is what they say. You know, you'll get the little what is it made out of?
The resin coat.
The resin coat that, you know, can stay there, which granted you can bury that or cover it.
You know,
up,
yeah, and Mark, you know, two thoughts on that. As Josh says, Klons does sell Vulkaponic with fertilizer in it. They sell far more without fertilizer. A couple thoughts on bringing it into our country. One, if we bring ocean containers that say fertilizer on the bill of lading, that's explosive. They don't know it's just a micro amount of fertilizer, but it'd be really hard to get it through customs. Secondly, when that fertilizer sits in the bags, if it's not out to your job site rather quickly, if it sits in a container because of inventory being, first in, last out, so to speak, that fertilizers would end up opening up and distributing and getting so much of a high content, you do your planting and end up burning the roots. So for those reasons, we don't bring fertilizer in the Vulkaponic.
Okay, thank you.
All right, my next hand up is Matthew.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, let me snag Matthew McDonald, and then who was that?
Jan Goodman.
Jan. We'll come to Jan here right after Matthew.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Karen. I'm down here with Matt and Will at the warehouse. And so what I'm wondering is, it sounds like, you know, usually a lot of our prep work is done at our warehouse for big, you know, and so it sounds like a lot of the labor will actually then be transferred to on-site. Am I understanding correctly?
Not necessarily. As we all know, every installation is different. It does add weight to your container, which we really don't see as a bad thing. In fact, in some instances, it's a good thing because it's more difficult to move. But for anything that could be pretty top heavy, it makes it difficult to transport that from your warehouse to the facility. So it could be that we're backfilling Vulkaponic into the containers to an amount that then allows us to take that plant root ball into the Vulkaponic and then fill that back up. You know, when you're looking at earth walls, which, you know, I think is one of John Pierre's most popular products, you know, just depending on where it needs to go, we may choose to do that in our warehouse. We may choose to do that in the back of a truck on site. We may choose to do it on the 20th floor of where that plant's going. So it really does all depend.
Yeah, and I would also say that for your typical smaller jobs, less than half a pallet or a pallet, you know, once you get to the point of a larger job where you know you have multiple pallets of product, just for sheer efficiency, you're going to want to move the Vulkaponic out to a staging area and do the work out there. Our colleagues in Europe will oftentimes have Vulkaponic delivered straight to the job site and plant over there because there's some really massive installations and it's just more efficient. But you know, depending on the number of plants, you can do it either way. I would say for us, most of the time we plant in our warehouse and transfer. Although if we had jobs that were more than a pallet or two, we would consider taking the raw product to the job site and building up there. Yeah.
Okay. And just one question to tag on to that is, if you planted a 14-inch ficus tree on Vulkaponic, how heavy would then that be approximately when it's all planted up? If we did it at the warehouse, and then we're just thinking about if there would additional labor would be needed at the other end to carry it or to install it. Yeah.
Well, that's a great question. To answer that, our average use of Vulkaponic for a 14-inch plant is 30 liters. I say average because that averages what capacity a ASI Phoenix needs and the ASI European cylinder needs. So it's 30 liters. Those 25-liter sample bags you're receiving are 49 pounds. So you're going to be probably 55 pounds in built up additional, and it sort of depends on how wet the Vulkaponic is. So when it transfers, but you know, you'll find that where you may have had one installer doing a job, you may want to send two out there and get it, you know, installed quickly, but just to save their backs and that type of thing. So there, you know, there is a weight component, but all those specs, I think it's like 49 pounds per cubic foot. That's all on our website on a spec sheet, but it does weigh more than soil, and I believe it's about 30% more than soil.
Okay,
And I
great.
think
Thank you so much. Mhm.
So
You're welcome,
Karen, I think,
Jan.
yeah, I think Karen, by depending, because we use a lot of very heavy stone containers, you know, we are definitely looking, maybe talked about it before, on hard liners. So we would just be putting it direct planted into Vulkaponic in a hard liner and then just bringing them two separately, plopping it right in. And,
Gotcha.
you know, we'll just be using a lot more two-wheelers. I think you know, we're having an ops meeting in the next week to talk about that. We have an advantage. One of our best ops, like, people that is now working for Nature, Tony Friend. We can call him anytime. Not as he's installing all the time.
That's right.
He can give us the good, the bad, and the ugly, or the great, and the great.
Yeah.
So, quick question about fertilizer.
Thanks for giving us Tony.
Yeah, I want him back. So, quick question about fertilizer. We only use organic, so we wouldn't be using any of the Osmocote or any of that. Have you any experience with using any organic fertilizers? Or
when you say organic, do you mean like a fish emulsion, or what kind of product?
All kind of different stuff. I mean, we've used Super Thrive and Nature's something, I can't even remember. We do use some the Dynagrow. I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah.
Like I'd have to ask the team, Karen, what our I mean, we don't fertilize a lot because we don't want the plants to grow a lot, right?
Right.
Jan, let me answer that. I think you'll find that it won't make any difference because it really, your source of fertilizer may be organic, it may be chemical based, but what the real benefit of Vulkaponic is the zeolites, because the zeolites have this capacity for cation exchange. And when it comes down to it, whatever your fertilizer source is, it's going to still be nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, all the minors, and they will be adhering to that that zeolite. There's a property in the zeolites called clinoptilotite. But anyway, it's technical. But we've done a deep dive into this, and so the zeolites will still hold those fertilizer ions regardless of the source.
Great, awesome. Because I know certain fertilizers, organic, don't do well in irrigation systems and things like that. I just didn't know if there's any issue with that.
Well, I wouldn't do those chopped up fish. I'd stay away from those though.
Yeah, we use Super Thrive just as a boost sometimes, not as a regular fertilizer. But all right, yeah, that was it. We're excited. We just ordered a couple pallets of the 1,500 liter pallets to start getting it done.
Yes. Hey, I just want to be aware of the time. It's 11:05. Happy to stay on for anybody who has questions. This was recorded. We'll send it out. And by all means, if there's a question you have after you get your sample or for a specific installation or whatever, we are certainly happy to answer all that.
Maybe take one more question. Amy has her hand up.
I see Amy's hand up. I was going to come to Amy. Amy, go ahead.
Hi. I was just wondering if you use a moss top dressing with it, how does it work?
Absolutely. So what we know is challenges with certain top dressing all comes down to how you're using your foam collars and the soil that in a grow pot tends to deplete a little bit. That's not an issue that you have with Vulkaponic. So it's in fact easier to be able to get a very smooth surface that you can use your moss, whether that be your Spanish moss or your sheet moss. And the big benefit, and I don't know if in your area this is, you know, something that's trending, but like your river rocks, which are always a challenge. They're always falling down, they're pushing the foam collars down. Well, now you have a very sturdy surface to be able to place your river rocks on top of. Some people have said, well, what do people say about the look of Vulkaponic? A lot of people really, really like it. It's a cool, clean look, but you can also top dress it, you know, again, with
It
any
really looks good.
theme.
Does
Yeah,
it get
I mean,
dirty?
gosh,
Does
I
it?
don't think you need the top dressing, really.
I agree.
I
I
saw a
agree.
lot of installations in Europe and at William Braid's, and he took me to
Yeah.
massive planter beds, potted plants, and it is truly so much better looking. And it just seems like a waste to do a top dressing, and it's just more sustainable not to, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
And it's really good looking stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
It can get dirty. I heard you say that. It's pretty easy to clean, and you can always put some, you know, on top of it. But yeah, depending on like if you were to use that fish emulsion type of fertilizer, I would think that it might absorb that color. You know, which is something that you'd have to take into consideration.
I'll say one thing about another benefit of Vulkaponic. It is reusable. So if you have jobs that come back, like a lace ends, or you're changing up the design, you're bringing it back, you can pull that root ball out, set it to the side, and you're going to have certainly some contamination of pieces of soil and the Vulkaponic. We really don't have the experience, and because we haven't had to do this, but in Europe, it is definitely a reusable product. It's part of the sustainability. So you might find you're putting it out on a warehouse floor. Maybe you're using a blower at a low speed to blow away the lightweight soil. Maybe it's a tank vac. But if you get it to a point of you know, relative cleanliness, and again, some soil particles in it isn't going to harm it because you're going to already have a root ball against the Vulkaponic. It is reusable, so your investment will continue for other installations down the road.
All right, I'm going to roll through the chat questions that we have up here. I'm going to do so. Oh, wow. I was going to say quickly, but maybe it won't be so quick. How do you handle pest management on a 28-day cycle? Luke is asking. First and foremost, what we know is plants do better in Vulkaponic. One of the reasons why plants get pests is because they're weak.
They're stressed.
They're stressed. So anyway, digging into that a little bit deeper, I don't know, maybe it is something that you need to attend to, you know, more frequently. I can't think of how. Maybe spider mites is something that you'd want to get.
Well, I think the key is plants get pests because the plants aren't healthy.
That's right.
They're weakened. So if you're giving your plant everything you've got in order to keep it healthy with its aeration and the root system, I think you'll find you'll have fewer pests. But when you do, you may want to go back to that intermittent check for that period of time to eradicate those pests, and then go on back to your 28-day cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Luke, if that didn't answer your question, feel free to reach back out. Tim, Plants by Design, asked what were some of the lessons you learned? This is a great question. As you introduced the product to new accounts, ideal plant type, waterproofing, containers, technician watering, wellness visit. Holy cow, that's a whole lot of stuff. So I'll just hit on a couple of these. Yeah, absolutely. Waterproofing. And I'm glad you brought this up because you do have to have a waterproof reservoir for Vulkaponic. Now, the Vulkaponic, as we said, is absorbing all the water over the course of a 24-hour period or so. So you're not, there's no reservoir where water's just sitting in, like with Leka or Wickenreiser, you know, has, you know, a reservoir that's got to pull from, but waterproofing. So on our website, there is that process diagram, and it talks through a couple of products. Really, when I think about it, there's really four ways to do it. One, buy your containers waterproofed from ASI. There is an upcharge on that, but ASI can waterproof your containers. You can waterproof your containers as well. The product that we use is called RedGuard. It's a shower pan waterproofing. We use 2 coats. It goes on pretty quick. It dries, relatively quick. It dries a different color, so you know when it's dry.
And that's all available at the resources page on that using that.
It's on the resources page. Two other products I want to talk to you about. One is what we call a flex liner. ASI sells the no sweat liners. It's very similar to that. We use some that are clear and a little bit deeper. ASI is working on maybe changing up the recipe on those. And then what we use more often than that is what we call a super flex liner. So you got your flex liners, which is kind of that. Oh, we should have brought some in here. It's that plastic molded type of product. But our super flex liners it's a big name to say. It's kind of like a trash bag. That being said, it is an FDA food grade, waterproof,
8 millimeters,
super thick, sized perfectly to your use liner. And there will be more information to come on those. Obviously, it's quite a bit cheaper when you're going that route. But yeah, those are some lessons learned. And then I'm just gonna tell you right now, we have a lot of fiberglass containers out there that we don't seal. And fiberglass is inherently waterproof, right? Like think of your boat. But what can happen is if you get one of those fibers, like think of a container, if you get one of those fibers that's supposed to be going kind of up and down or vertical on a container or even horizontal, but it sticks through that fiberglass, it can actually wick moisture out. And so that's really what you're trying to avoid there. So a bunch of different ways to go about waterproofing it. Let me get back to a couple other things that you brought up. Technician training. We know that educating all of us on this call is one of the most important things with what the benefits are, how we install it, and how we maintain it, which is why we've spent a lot of time building a lot of documentation on that and a lot of time updating that. One of those documents is on version 13. So as we've learned, we've kind of changed and adapted to that. What I will tell you is that for me, and all the plants in my house are on Vulkaponic, I overwatered the plants. Our horticulturalists tend to underwater the plants. All right. I'm not doing this day in and day out. And we all know that you're typically better off if you keep plants a little bit more on the dry side. It's easier to recover from that than overwatering. But that's why we looked at, putting a video together, putting documentation on water requirements. Again, you still have to be a horticulturalist, right? We're not trying to do away with that skill set. But you are going to have to take that knowledge into how much water should I be putting into this plant.
Hey, I just want to say to everybody on the call, personally, I got to jump to another meeting, but Josh will stay on to continue with the Q&A. I've got to say one thing to Heather Carmona. Does your ROI calculator take into account shipping? I forgot to mention, since that was my part of the presentation, those were landed costs for the $14.95 a bag. 4 or more, $13.95. That's to your door. So I apologize for that, but I had to get that in. Thank you, everybody. Great to see all the faces of those that I know, recognize, and have spoke to in the past. And Josh, you guys can wrap it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me get down to Peter's. So you would not be using the old grow pot? No, you would not. You're taking this out of the grow pot. That being said, and you have to understand that we're building a reservoir here. We want the bigger the reservoir, the more moisture it's going to be able to hold. That being said, a lot of plants in my house, I took that ASI pot off, which we all know is bigger than the 14-inch grow pot, and I shook a little more soil off the root ball. Again, you don't have to, and you probably shouldn't. But I did, and I planted directly into that ASI grow pot because it's bigger. You can do that. More than likely, you are limiting the reservoir size that you need. So for us here at Natura, we are planting directly into those decorative containers. And what are you doing with the old soil? Yeah, we're dumping it. Yeah, not really a problem. In fact, all our stuff goes into like construction type dumpsters in I don't know what they do with it, but that's what happens with it. All right, yes, Mike answered that question. The ROI calculator does take into account shipping. With reduced maintenance and labor costs, will our industry just cut its maintenance costs and potentially profitability again, like we did when we went to a 14-day to 7-day cycle? How low can we go, Jay? I hope we don't. You don't need to. You shouldn't. No, this is designed in what we've seen. So, all right, we looked at this. 400 accounts that we've got on Vulkaponic. A lot of those are retrofits. We've gone through and retrofitted those accounts. We have seen 300 hours reduced from our team. Now, this is not to say like people's our number one core value here. We want to pay our people more, And I'm glad you brought this up because this is my heart behind it. People need to make more money, and you can only issue so many price increases to customers, right? So I said, all right, to be able to pay people more, we have to have the ability for them to manage more revenue, right? We've got to be able to scale what they're able to do. We need to find ways to make them more efficient. So how do you go about doing that without depleting quality? You have to figure out how to get them in front of more revenue, and that's why we're doing this. I want to pay fewer people more, and that's what we're doing. So we saw a 300-hour reduction when on just what equates to about 10% of our accounts on Vulkaponic. And so we're not changing prices. Are there going to be people who use this and go lowball things? There might be. I hope not. But certainly that could be the case. But for us, we're using this to be able to pay our people more, not to continually have to issue price increases to our customers. And we're already seeing that that's the case. Our horticulturalists love it. Their plants look better. I mean, you guys know them. They love it when their accounts look awesome. And so they're really happy with the product and providing us, a lot of great feedback. So can't affect what a lot of people do, but no, I do not foresee that being the case. That's not what you see, in Europe, and they're 20 years into this. Mark, thanks for the presentation. A lot of these logistics are specific to warmer weather climates. You're probably right. In colder climates, you're probably pretty restricted on how you go about doing what you're doing. For us, there's a lot of flexibility in there. All right. If there are not any more questions, I really appreciate y'all's time. Always available to answer more, share more of our experience, and please send them in because all the documentation that you have out there, the FAQs that you see on the website come from people just asking questions that you may feel are not valid, but I promise you that they are. And so please send them in. Happy to answer them. All right. Well, if that is all, again, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. ASI is standing by to answer any questions or take orders. They have product sitting in California and soon to be California, in Connecticut and Texas and Florida. So hit us up with any questions that you have. I hope you guys had some awesome holiday installs. Maybe you're kind of in the breathing room space before we have to take it all down. But Merry Christmas to you all, and looking forward to talking with y'all soon.
Thank you.
Josh.
Thank you.
Bye, Mike.
Right,
Josh, could I ask one quick question before you go?
Yes.
It's Matt, but it's really not Matt, it's Karen.
Hey, Karen. Yeah, Karen, go
I'm
ahead.
wondering, is the Vulkaponic reusable? So if a client cancels, yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So in fact, I was in our warehouse. I hate when we lose customers, but we lose customers from time to time,
Yeah.
right? We all have an allowance for that. It's going to happen, particularly since we're going through and doing retrofits. I'm like, how long has that plant been in Vulkaponic? It looks fantastic.
Wow.
Anyway, yes, absolutely. You would, pull that plant out and you can wash that Vulkaponic off if you need to. Obviously, it's going to collect, some soil and things like that. For me, when I play around with it, and I maybe haven't figured out the best way to go about doing it, but you like separate the wheat from the chaff. They blow it. So I'll take a cup of it and just like a light little blower, and all that dry soil blows away, and your clean-ish Vulkaponic, blows down. But even if there are some remnants of soil in there, it's really not a big issue when you're reusing it. Maybe for the top dressing part of it, you want cleaner Vulkaponic. And then, yeah, certainly you could get screens and really wash it as clean as it was when you received it the first time. And that really, so thanks for bringing this up, because when you look at Europe, the reason why they use Vulkaponic is sustainability.
Right, and that's what we're looking at.
Number one reason why they use it from a couple different angles. So peat moss, which is one of the largest components of soil, there's going to be a ban on their ability to use peat moss because they're just digging it. All their peat bogs are being depleted. Right. And so there's that angle. And then certainly from okay, well, what else could you use? Well, we could use leca, we could use haydite, there are other mineral substrates that we could use. But when you look at those, they take a ton of fossil fuels to get to the state that they're usable, right? I mean, they're heating it up to like 2,000, 2,500 degrees to be able to expand that clay, whereas this was already expanded by a volcanic eruption, many years ago. And then it is reusable. We don't have to go as often, right? It's not ideal for us to be going to a plant all over our cities every 7 days. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so there's certainly a sustainability component there, and many more. If you look at websites from companies like Planteria or Plant Designs, or a whole lot of them over in Europe, sustainability is the number one factor that they use to tout Vulkaponic.
Great. Yeah. Oh, that's really great to know. All right. Well, thank you so much. Sorry to jump in last minute here, but thanks everyone.
Karen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Anyone else out there going once, going twice? Sasha, I see you on the call. Thank you for joining from Germany. What time is it over there? I know it's pretty late. In fact, it's probably like 7:30. All right. Well, appreciate all y'all joining us today. You guys have a great one. Any questions, please, by all means, shoot them our direction. hello@vulkaponicusa.com. There you are, Sasha. Good to see you. For those of you still on, Sasha is with Klons. They're the manufacturer of Vulkaponic over in Germany. Good to see you. He will be at TPIE coming up in January, so we'll get an opportunity to introduce you to all our greatest friends. All right, signing off here from San Antonio, Texas. You guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk soon. Adios.
Bye. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, Sasha.